which is a bit of a journey, but we heard all about that, and the details stayed with me for quite a long time afterwards, and I'm very much looking forward to what Ellyn has to say to us today, because she's chosen as her theme for this afternoon, Youth in Contemporary Culture. Now, I suggested to Ellyn in one of my very uncharitable moments, of which there seem to be increasing numbers, I said, youth and culture surely must be an oxymoron. So she wasn't very pleased with me when I said that. I wasn't being rude about youth and culture. It's just that it seems to have moved so much. And I can't keep up with that, and there's very little point in my even thinking about trying to keep up with it. I don't understand, and I shall never get used to loud noises, beyond those which I can make myself. That is, you know. But there we are. Ellyn has a great deal of interest and influence in the areas about which she's going to speak, so I'm going to ask you to welcome her again, please, Ellyn von Huben.
Thank you so much for having me back here again. I'll try not to become quite so giddy today and speak so quickly. I can be a very slow speaker in a crisis, and when I'm happy and have something to share, the words come out a mile a minute, and I'm really going to try to keep my enthusiasm in check. My first blog article for Father Barron's Word on Fire blog 2 years ago, which is what brought me to the attention of the organizers of Your Fabulous convention. It was about Lady Gaga. I think I was given that as a topic maybe to give me something I could really sink my teeth into as a good subject and go to town and get off to a good start with my first post. I wanted to offer a Catholic perspective on this popular musician. She's also a Catholic musician. And I gave it the hefty and alliterative, really ambitious title, Bad Romance, Misdirected Eros, Misappropriation of Religious Symbolism, and Mistaken Hyperdulia of the Wrong Madonna, all set to an irresistible beat. Fortunately, my editor trimmed that title. I thought I had something going there, and I think I tried to sum it all up just in the title. Besides Lady Gaga's catchy pop tunes, one thing that caught my eye was that she was an alumni of a Sacred Heart school, as I am. I went to Barra College of the Sacred Heart in Lake Forest, Illinois, and Lady Gaga was a graduate of a Sacred Heart High School in New York City. And I sort of wonder, what the sisters think of their graduate. Do they, worry about her salacious undulations or her smutty lyrics and all of the publicity, good, bad, and otherwise? And I wonder, too, if perhaps they feel a bit of embarrassment about the holes in her religious formation, because you can see where some lines just did not connect. So why should we care about Stephanie Germanotta, aka Lady Gaga? Well, she's not going to go away, and she is blessed, truly blessed, with a rich talent. Concerned parents like to predict that bad influences are going to be a flash in the pan. I guess I'm giving away my age when I say I remember my parents, my aunts and uncles, tisking about the Beatles and saying how they'd be gone like that, or the Rolling Stones. And, I kind of think Mick Jagger should, hang it up at some point. He's starting to look a little undignified after some 50 years. So some of these people, their talent may not be classical, but they keep it going, and they're not flash in the pans. And as parents and fellow human beings, we have to be concerned. To start out, also, some people talk about Lady Gaga as being a Madonna imitator or whatever. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Madonna, another great American entertainer. She's from Michigan. She is also Catholic, and many of you may not be familiar with her music, but may be familiar with some of the controversies because she also uses religious symbolism. And Madonna strikes me as someone, as kind of a wounded soul, a really sad person, and with a lot of her art, she seems to be lashing out. In other ways, Lady Gaga, I think, has a better heart and maybe is more open to redemption. And right now she has, though, assumed the mantle of Queen of Catholic Girls Gone Bad. Very, very bad. Madonna, I think, is getting close to retirement age. Sometimes young people will say, and I used to say this when I was a kid and listening to whatever pop music in high school, I just like the music, the words aren't important. And I know my children have said that to me. The problem is that the words are important, and even if you're not trying to pay attention to the words are the music is a conduit for the words to get into your mind. Some of you might be familiar with the Schoolhouse Rock TV video thing. It came out like 20 years ago, but they set simple school lessons to catchy tunes, and I can still, talk about diagramming sentences if you just give me the right tune. When I was homeschooling my children, I found that you could conjugate regular Latin verbs to the tune of the Mexican hat dance. Amo, amas, amat, amamus. I'm not going to do it. I'm not much of a singer, but so we would conjugate verbs singing that song. So, words matter, and music helps move the words into the mind. Lyrics are important. Words are important. So think of it. In the beginning was the Word. What's the good word? A man is as good as his word. Only say the word, and my soul shall be healed. As brothers and sisters in Christ, and also, concerned parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, what should we think about a performer who had 2 of her songs on the Boston Public Health Commission's top 10 list of songs with unhealthy relationship ingredients? A performer who uses her talent with the turn of a phrase in service of really untethered eroticism. I would say that those are the words and her images that she creates. Those are the creations of an artist whose body of work illustrates what St. Thomas Aquinas said about lust. Man cannot live without joy. Therefore, when he's deprived of true spiritual joys, it is necessary that he become addicted to carnal pleasures. And in a world in which many young people are not led to the opportunity for spiritual joy, they may quite easily fall into the trap of carnal pleasure. There's an interesting book by a Dr. Madeline Levine, and she talks about, it's titled The Price of Privilege. She talks about the pitfalls of growing up overprivileged. Children grow up in almost a hothouse environment, beautiful homes, a safe town, excellent schools, all the material extras for sports and hobbies and whatever. But these children wilt rather than thrive in the hothouse that they are growing in. They develop crippling psychological problems, and they can go on to self-medicate with drugs, sex, a variety of inappropriate outlets. Because the one thing they have been deprived of is spiritual joy. External rewards and comforts are no substitute for the joys of life in Christ, and so they reach out for carnal pleasures and find despair. Some find their way back, but not all do. And artists like Lady Gaga are sometimes their companions in this reaching out for pleasures and things to take the space in their heart where Jesus should be. When I talk about the pitfalls of youthful privilege, I can't help right now detour into a brief mention of some tragic events in my own hometown in recent months. Some of you may be familiar with the movie Ordinary People. It won several Academy Awards around 1980. and it had Mary Tyler Moore and Donald Sutherland, and it was set in and filmed on location in Lake Forest, Illinois, which is where I work, and it's the town right next door to where I live. I remember even holding my one-year-old daughter and standing on the sidewalk and watching them film one of the street scenes. And for those of you who don't remember, it's a movie about a family that disintegrates. The older son dies in a boating accident. The younger son has all sorts of despair, survival guilt, and attempts suicide. And when he returns to the family, the mother just cannot deal with the imperfection, and the family falls apart. I remember this so many years later because in contrast with all of the despair once again in front of us, in the past 3 months, 3 young men from the same high school, Lake Forest High School, have committed suicide by throwing themselves in the path of commuter trains. A similar cluster of suicides happened several years ago in California, and it was the same sort of community, talented, driven, well-off young people who succumbed to despair. And just as in California, these train tracks run through a town directly to the north of us where there is a lot of poverty, a lot of reason for despair, material deprivation. Those aren't the young people who are throwing themselves in front of the trains. It's not to say that there's no spiritual joy found in my own community. But there's a gap that needs to be filled, and all I can do right now, because I'm here today, is ask you to keep the children of my town in your prayers, along with all the children in the world, because there is so very much need. Yesterday, when Ignatius was speaking, he mentioned how everyone can reach out to some child who might just need some little thing, or just, a shoulder to cry on, or a listening ear. I'm something of an eternal optimist about things where other people see only negativity. Lady Gaga has become a popular star in the gay community, and I feel like I'm sort of on thin ice here because I'm not endorsing that, and I'm not here to endorse the gay lifestyle. I don't think I would have been invited here. So I don't want to be misunderstood. I just want to talk a little bit about how we can look for a ray of sunshine in some of her work, because we really can't make her go away. Last year, Lady Gaga and her mother, and I think it's just a good sign, she still stays with her parents when she's in New York. She does things with her parents. She speaks with her parents. So I think right there she's a good role model in that respect. She started the Born This Way Foundation to foster a more accepting society where differences are embraced and individuality is celebrated. Part of the mission of this foundation is to eliminate bullying, particularly the bullying of young gay people. Though I fall into the demographic that many of Lady Gaga's fans would label homophobic, I'm not phobic. There's a knee-jerk reaction that some people have to those who follow God's word on how to live, and they call us phobic. I reject certain agendas, but I am not afraid of these people. They need God's love as much as the rest of us. I don't want to encourage young people to explore sinful experiences or relationships, but I am happy to see that someone who has a certain degree of popularity in pop culture is reaching out to help bring an end to bullying and hurtful behavior. By trying to create a climate where differences are embraced, this kind of movement of Lady Gaga's may also, no matter how unintentionally, be laying a groundwork for a new culture of life. As I said, we can't make her go away, but perhaps we can use some of her messages in ways that she had not even intended. We're seeing a gradual graying of the hardcore pro-choice movement. One look at the fresh young faces at the annual March for Life that takes place every January 22nd in Washington, D.C., in the USA, on the anniversary of our dreadful Roe versus Wade decision, that shows us that youth are turning their backs on the culture of death. And that's the culture that, my parents' generation helped create a little bit, and my generation has done much to create. And my children's generation now is working to take that apart. So when we look at someone like Lady Gaga, where some might see only encouragement for aberrant lifestyle choices, I hope that we have a foot in the door to encourage all young people who feel that they aren't good enough, not smart enough, thin enough, pretty enough, a foot in the door to help them learn about God's love. I was going to quote for you a little bit of Gaga's Born This Way, but it sounds better when she sings it. I am not a singer, but a lot of people just latch on to what they consider to be the gay agenda. But in the words to her song, she reaches out and says, whether you're black or white, Lebanese or Orient, which I thought was politically terribly incorrect. My grandchildren are half Chinese, and we always say Asian. Oriental is the rug. And she says, whether life's disabilities left you outcast, bullied, or teased, rejoice and love yourself today, because baby, you were born this way. So I hope other people are getting a good message from this, girls who might be on the brink of an eating disorder, or children who feel left out because they're not good enough students, or they're too good a student and they feel isolated from their friends because of their brains. So, as I said, I hope a little bit of this, because we can't make it disappear, I hope it rubs off and helps in the seeds of what's going to bloom into a new generation of a culture of life. All of you who are parents know how difficult it is to protect our children. When they're really young, it's easy. You can keep things out of the house. You can turn off the radio when they're around. But before you know it, they're exposed to things you can't control. I enjoyed homeschooling my children. We sort of fell into it. We didn't set out to homeschool, but because of my son's neurological problems, we did. And as time went along, I found one of the side effects that was really nice was that they were not exposed, my two boys, were not exposed to all of the cultural influences that they would pick up on a school bus in the playground, just in the day-to-day at school. I was able to control more. But that doesn't mean that there weren't cultural influences brought home by older children. My 4 girls were in school most of the time. I did homeschool some of them some of the time. It's a long story, and I don't have time to explain it. But I always sort of admired younger children. I'm the oldest in my family, and I noticed my friends who were not the oldest had a little more, savvy in life, because they had older brothers and sisters who would teach them about things, the clothes, the pop stars, whatever, and I had to figure things out for myself with my friends, and then it was my sister who got to be more with it and whatever, because she was learning from me. But that can be bad, too, with certain musical influences and things that, your children are bringing home to the younger people. And there are a few places you can go with your children, even when they're young, that they won't be exposed to a modicum of pop culture. I find lately I cannot pump gas, or petrol as you call it, for my car without music blasting in the grocery store or the mini mart. And that you can't really control. I suppose you could hustle your children out of a store if it got too bad, but there's a lot of influence. And don't even get me started on the magazines that you find at the grocery store. Nothing takes the thrill out of knowing your child is learning to read under your tutelage than hearing them put their new verbal phonic skills to use, sounding out a headline maybe from Cosmopolitan magazine. It's Very, very disappointing. My children are no longer young, but my days as a vigilante turning over horrible magazine covers on the rack are not over. If our cultures become a moral free-for-all, I'll do what I can do to help guard the innocent little people. And if all I can do in any given day is just to flip over a Cosmopolitan magazine so the child behind me in line doesn't see it, that I'll do. No discussion of Lady Gaga can overlook her use of religious imagery. Like many not really well-catechized people of her generation, she knows just enough to make her dangerous. There's a longing for the sacred that leaves us open to powerful imagery, but this openness to religious imagery is so easily exploited with the cheapest of ploys. I pray that this horrible abuse of our religion just to make a splash has run its course. I made the mistake of tuning in to this year's Grammy Awards show, and I saw the entertainer, and I'm using that term very loosely, named Nicki Minaj, and she made a spectacle of a performance with an unremarkable song, and she trotted out an array of Catholic imagery mixed up with deviant behavior in a disgusting hodgepodge. If it hadn't been offensive, deeply offensive to me, and if I hadn't been offended by the network's total disregard for my faith and the faith of so many people, I would have felt sorry for her. The performance resembled more like a tantrum. She was going to do anything she could do to get attention and to be hurtful. I think sometimes as I said with Madonna, some of these entertainers have problems that need to be addressed. Instead, they're allowed to act out on the public's stage, and we pay them for it. Sadder still are business people who are willing to make a profit from these troubled souls. We no longer have mental institutions where people can come to look at the institutionalized, like I believe Bedlam was back in London 400 years ago. But if you want to be wacky enough and have issues and talent, you can get a show, you can get a contract and make videos. Item 1052 in my trusty Baltimore Catechism, and as a Catholic homeschooler, I depended on this. I mean, this was really a wonderful, well laid out tool for catechesis. It gives a simple definition of sacramentals. A sacramental is anything set apart or blessed by the church to excite good thoughts and to increase devotion. There's the problem. The abuse of sacramentals and sacramental imagery will excite the opposite of good thoughts and fail to increase devotion. And to the pious, for whom sacramentals do excite good thoughts by recalling to our minds some special reason for doing good and avoiding evil, especially by reminding us of some holy person, event, or thing through which blessings may have come to us, to witness the desecration of these things is an offense that can hardly be dismissed with a "she knows not what she does." From the cross that she uses in the title of The Fame Monster, to the nun's rubber habit and other desecration of a rosary in the video to Alejandro. And trust me, I forced myself to watch all 8 minutes and 43 seconds of it so I could speak with clarity. It's apparent that Lady Gaga believes she knows what she does. One's response to so much of this dreck of pop culture could naturally be to withdraw from it. But as parents, teachers, friends of young people, we can't afford to do this. For us, ignorance of those things that distract and detract from the life of faith leaves us unprepared to help those we love navigate the veritable minefield that awaits them in the world at large. As protective as we wish to be, there will always be young people who, to use a phrase that's common in my family, they like to lick the frying pan. I'll give you a short story. It's not as disturbing as you might think. When I was about 4 years old, I was already maybe on my way to being a junior lawyer. I was standing on a chair watching my mother saute some onions or something for dinner, and she was using an electric frying pan. She had put some butter in the frying pan and said, "Ellen, it's very hot, stay away from it. Ellen, don't lay a hand on the frying pan." I licked it. Maybe that's why food tastes different to me today. I don't know. Maybe I destroyed something. My mother was horrified. She was very angry with me and also very worried. She called the doctor because she was worried about what to do for my burned tongue, and plus had to admit that a child who was really old enough to not do something that dumb was that dumb. So actually what I had to do for like the rest of the day is lick ice water out of a bowl like a kitten to cool my tongue. I didn't eat for about a week, but that's always stayed in my family, the Smith family, as sort of a catchphrase for children who just, they want to, they'll look at the words and they'll work the rules exactly, to their advantage. And they will go out, and despite whatever admonitions they receive, they've just got to try it themselves. So, sometimes with some of our children, we can say, "No, don't do that, stay away from it, it's terrible." And they will accept that. Other young people, that is almost like an invitation for them to do it. And so there's a virtual frying pan out there. Electronic media, which can be a very great tool for good, for education, evangelization, also can bring the evils of the world close to home, indeed right into your home. Facebook, Twitter, email, websites, they're wonderful tools for communications and staying in touch. And if I can digress a little bit here, that's what makes me sad when I see people totally dismiss new media today as being evil, just because some people use it for evil, because it can be such a tool for good. And I would suggest, if you're interested in new media, or if you're on a parish committee that's hoping to build a better website for your parish, or do something like that for evangelization, you might want to check out a book by a young man from Florida. His name is Brandon Vaught, V-O-G-T, and it's called The Church and New Media, Blogging Converts, Online Activists, and Bishops Who Tweet. And it's a wonderful resource broken down into very specific chapters that can really help people who are trying to explore the good that can be done for evangelization and the church. Even I'm trying to keep up with things. I had little cards, with my name and email, so when people ask me for that, I can give them out. My husband now updated them for me, so I have 2 of those little codes that you see sometimes on things for people to read with their iPhones. So you always have to stay, in touch so you know what's going on. But like I said, these can be tools for good. But sometimes these tools also drive a wedge between families. You may have seen families together in a restaurant or whatever, but instead of chatting and having a good time, you see they're all looking down like this, working both thumbs and either texting their friends to say how bored they are having dinner with their parents, and their parents are doing business on their phones or whatever. So it can drive a wedge between families. And personal contact, that family time, is just so important, and it goes too fast, and when it's gone, it's gone. And so we have to be careful about that. And negative influences can get a real leg up in this age of rapid communication. Bad ideas and frivolous distractions can spread so much faster in the 21st century than they did when I was a child. Gone is the past where school children communicated with notes that you passed to each other in the hallway or classroom, and long chats, if you could, tying up the one phone that was in your family's house, one phone. I'd like to quote again today from Flannery O'Connor, the late Southern American writer. She has so much to say for the 21st century. As a message for all Christians. She said we have to push back against the age as hard as it pushes against you. What people don't realize is how much religion costs. They think faith is a big electric blanket, when of course it is the cross. So we need to be informed about what's going on. We can't push back against the age if we don't know what the age is pushing at us. Flannery also said the truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it. That goes for the hard truths of our faith, which I'd say many young people fall on that side these days. Or even, people in my age group, they cannot stomach the truths of our faith. There's the harsh reality of the culture that surrounds us. So we have to know what's going on. If we have strong faith, that can give us the undergirding, or whatever you would call it, to venture into territories that, might be dubious for other people. Last year I read a really good book by Patti Smith, an American musician and artist and Renaissance woman, called Just Kids. It's nothing I would recommend to high school readers or to my children. For those sound in their faith, you can find real moments of the movement of grace in this book. But this is one of these areas where there has to be discernment, and I find it disturbing when high schools or public libraries just have this wide open kind of policy of children can read whatever they want. Some things are for grown-ups. Also, I don't know if any of you ever saw the movie Fight Club, which is kind of a bizarre, intense movie. I started reading some of the novels by Robert Palahniuk, I think that's how you pronounce it, last year. They can be pretty harsh. I wouldn't recommend those for young people. But if you have that undergirding of faith, you can even find the movement of grace in these books. Before Larry King went off the air, you may be familiar with Larry King from his American television show. I think he's like 200 years old or something. He had an interview with Lady Gaga, and he talked to her about religion, and her response sort of got to me like proverbial nails on a blackboard. She dismissed religion for some sort of nebulous spirituality, and she seems to have a certain misunderstanding of God, his mercies, and his church. But she knows how to cash in on the affections that distract from and supplant spiritual love. She said, heaven or hell, I guess I could go either way, couldn't I? That much she got right. But we can hope that through God's grace, and where sin abounds, may grace abound even more, that her prodigious talents and energy be put to better use for her sake, for ours, and for the world's. Recently, there have been some articles about how Lady Gaga has been diagnosed with lupus. Flannery O'Connor died from complications of systemic lupus in, I think it was 1963, maybe 64. Perhaps she would be someone whose intercession we could ask for a fellow lupus sufferer and talented Catholic woman. Her intercession to ask her to help Lady Gaga get on the right track and to use her talents, her wonderful God-given talents for rhymes, for music, for color, for dangerous shoes, that as a mother I would never let my child out of the house in shoes that dangerous. We can pray that she can turn this around. Prayer is the positive action that we can use when we're appalled, saddened, even entertained. She doesn't live near me, so I can't sneak into her house and put a green scapular under her mattress or anything. I don't see her in the market, but I can pray. There is a video, just as a last thing, a video that Lady Gaga did several years ago. like so many videos these days, it's very convoluted. I couldn't even really follow any narrative thread through it. It was all rather wacky. And it somehow ends with her and a friend in jail, and they're trying to call a friend to bail them out or whatever and can't get through. And so I'd like you to think in terms of that video, that her confidence, her flippant bluster, and her kabuki-like costumes, those horrible, scary shoes, they're a shell that separates Stephanie Germanotta from the flamboyant, concupiscent Lady Gaga. Our Lord's waiting. He's waiting for Stephanie, who in the waters of baptism died with Christ and rose with him to new life. She possesses a heart like all of us, a heart restless until it finds its rest in the Lord. When she's ready, when she calls Jesus, the message she receives won't be, "We're sorry, the number you've received is not in service." So please pray for our children, pray for Lady Gaga and all of those in the entertainment media. And thank you very much for having me here today. It's been wonderful.